I have a wall in front of me, I have a ceiling above my head, and I have a wall behind me. The tip of the rod's a paintbrush. What I'm going to do is put the paintbrush in the paint tin, and I'm going to imagine I'm going to paint the ceiling of the room. So I'm just going to paint the ceiling of the room. Straight back along the ceiling, straight forwards along the ceiling, and back to the paint tin. How many of you around the arena have tried fly casting before? Don't worry, I'm not going to pull anybody in that doesn't want to come in. How many have tried fly casting before? Okay, so when you tried fly casting, if you're normal, then you probably started off looking something like this. Yeah? So of course I see a lot of smiles around because this is exactly where we all start. And when that doesn't work for you, what do you do next? You adapt to white knuckle syndrome, right? So you catch the rod with all your might, you squeeze it as tight as you possibly can, and you wave it back and forward, and you're trying as hard as you can. And you can imagine me now, I was a young female. My uncle Michael, he died when I was 9 and left me his fishing rods. So whenever I got to the river, I did this. But then I thought, Glenda, you're female, you're not born to fish, so just try harder. So of course, if it doesn't work, you just add power. And what I can say to you is this: no matter how far you want to cast, it's not about power. If I pick this rod up with just 2 fingers and 2 thumbs on both hands, very, very little power is going to make this rod operate. So a very gentle, very smooth motion. But the first thing we need to know is how to hold a big stick like this. So we have a double-handed rod. Most people think double-handed, double, that must be twice as difficult as a single-hander. Well, it's not. To me, I think a double-handed rod is easier to learn with. However, I would say a single-handed rod is more versatile. You can go trout fishing, bass fishing, pike fishing, even salmon fishing with a single-hander. Whereas these rods, the longer ones, they're primarily used for salmon fishing. So we start holding the rod, we think of it as being a lever. We need to make the lever work. And if you've ever tried a double-handed rod, then usually your strongest arm will do all of the work, and you start off looking something like this, where you're pulling with your top arm and you're pushing forwards with your top arm. Well, in actual fact, what you should be doing is pushing out and pulling in. You're pushing out with your lower hand, and hands to the heart, laddies, you're pulling back in with your lower hand, push out, pull in. If I tighten the drive system, do nothing with this hand, catch it into a ring grip. If I just push out, and if I pull in, this rod will work. And it doesn't matter which cast I'm doing, you push out and pull in, it's a lower hand that's a driver. And that's weird to get used to, but once you get used to it, and you start to appreciate it, then the rod really takes a world of its own, and your casting becomes much better very quickly. Next one is, again, style bracket. So where you hold the rod exactly is entirely up to yourself. What I would say, though, is a very common fault is to start with the rod here. So if you put your rod here like this, you start with a big, long, stretched arm. So what I would say is, I like this rod, I'm going to keep it very close to my body. I'm going to make sure that I'm holding this, arms bent, 2 big hooks under my arms, and no matter what I'm doing with this particular line I'm using, I never have to straighten my arms, I never have to reach, and I don't bow to the river. Okay? So back straight, 2 shoulders pinned against the wall, and what we're doing is the overhead cast. So that's the style bracket. Style changes from caster to caster. What doesn't change, however, are casting principles. And there's 4 that I use. Quickly, I'm going to go through them. The first one is this, because many of you have heard me do this before. The first one is I'm going to pull the fly line. I'm going to maintain the tension against the rod. And another way of saying the same thing is that every single time I move the tip of the rod in any cast, I need to ensure the fly moves. If the fly doesn't move, I'm wasting my time. I have an elongated weight that I'm pulling. And in the schools, we do things like anaconda casts, we do helicopter casts. Anything that teaches a child, like, it's almost like ribbon dancing, where when you move the tip, the line moves, and when the line moves, the rod blows. So we have pull the fly line in every cast. Pull the fly line, pull the fly line, pull the fly line. Always maintaining the tension, never letting anything go slack. That's principle 1. Principle 2 is about how to move it. How fast do I pull? And when I'm pulling, what I'm doing is I'm accelerating. Accelerate, stop. Accelerate, stop, and chill. The overhead cast has 2 casts. 2 parts of the cast. There's the back cast, followed by the forward cast. And they're exactly the same. So you have accelerate, stop, As you can see here, I can just keep casting backwards if I want. Because it's exactly the same. Okay, so it's always accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop. For a long time I thought there was one stop. I would stop at the back, and then I'd just paint all the walls, all the line would roll across the river and scare away all the fish. So what I'm doing is I'm aiming at this fantastic castle ahead of me. I'm taking a point which is much higher than the river or the lake that you're fishing in. Always aim high. So I'm aiming high and relax. So it goes like this. Whomp, stop. Whomp, stop dead, don't move. And chill. So we have a stop. We have a stop. A very high stop. To enable your line to unfold. Gravity then takes over. Pulls it back down to the river, and that's when you slowly follow after it. So there's the first two principles, and these principles go through every single cast. And every forward cast is the same. So we have walk, stop, and chill. The last two principles got me very, very confused as a child. You see, my Uncle Michael died, left me the fishing rods, and I got to the river. An old man was there and said, Glenda, you got a fishing rod? I said, yeah. And he said, okay, big clock up in the trees, 110, 110. That's the arc you move your rod through. So I tried this. 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, splash, scared all the fish away. So what I need you to understand is that it doesn't matter where you stop. Okay, now think about it for a second. We've all been beat into us, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And before you think I'm knocking any other instructors, I'm not. I just want you to know I think 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock is very good as long as you're moving in the right direction. And when we teach 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, well that's good too because that's a short move. Short and short. What we don't want to do is the 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, which is what this is trying to teach us. But for me, I had a problem of crashing the river in front. So another old man came past and he says, Glenda, you're scared of fish. I said, I know. I said, can you help me? And he said, stop at 10 o'clock. And I looked at him and I thought, my goodness, I thought I was doing that. So, look, is this 10? And he looked at the rod and he scratched his head and he said, yes, it is. Well, try stopping at 11 o'clock. So for about 3 or 4 years, I played around with this clock face, and I had no idea where exactly I was supposed to stop moving the rod. Until I discovered, probably by reading books or I saw a DVD or something clicked in my brain, and I realized that it actually doesn't matter where you stop. What is really important is that you understand that the line is attached to the top of the rod. No matter what you do with the tip of the rod, the line has no choice to follow. So therefore, if you're moving downwards, even slightly with your hand, if you're moving downwards, the tip moves downwards, and the line follows. So, how many of you out there, learning to fish, have caught all of the stones and grass and everything behind you? I have. You think you're stopping at 1 o'clock, maybe you are stopping at 1, but if you go slightly downwards to 1 o'clock, then what happens is you start to hit everything behind you. So make sure you're going straight back to 1 o'clock. And if you have a bush behind you and you want to avoid it, you can go up to 1 o'clock and it'll sail up and past the bush. So it'll sail up, past the bush. So think to yourself, doesn't matter where I stop, what's really important is the direction my rod tip is moving in when I stop. Last one. After a while, I was quite happy with myself. And I thought, okay, I know how to cast now. I was quite happy that what I was doing, I wasn't scared of fish. I eventually caught my first trout, which was that size. So big, its head hung over one end of the saucer, and its tail hung over the other end. And I was very proud of myself. But then I started to pull some line off the reel. And well, me being me, I didn't really stop. I just kept pulling more and more line off the reel, until I had a load of line lying here. And I thought, well, I know how to cast. 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock. That was the only piece of cast knowledge I had. And that's what I did. So I went. 1 o'clock. 10 o'clock. No problem. Out it went. Nice loop. Caught fish. Then I tried to cast a bit further. 1 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Ooh. I'm starting to throw those horrible wind knots, where it develops knots all along my leader. Anybody a problem with wind knots? Anybody that fishes around this arena that doesn't have their hand up at the moment, well, I hate to tell you this, but you must have had a problem with wind knots at some time, because it's the biggest pain in the neck of all casters that I know. So I thought, Glenda, you're just female, try harder. White knuckle syndrome. I tried 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Well, the whole thing got worse and worse. So what I need to teach you is a relationship between how far you want to cast, how much ceiling you have to paint, and for how long you stop. And it's quite simple when you know this, but remember this principle goes through every single cast, right into your spade cast, which I'll discuss in a second. So we have short distance equals short strokes and short pauses. So you can use your paintbrush and your paint tin. So you go short, short, and if you're moving a short distance, then you just need a short pause because you only have a short amount of line to go straight behind before you can pull it forward. Now just to explain this so you understand what's happening here, when we cast over a short distance, what happens is the tip of the rod loads. And that's great, that's all we need to load, to be able to work that amount of line. But if we want to cast further, we need the rod to start loading into here. And that's what the rod is designed to do. Now for many years, people said to me, Glenda, let the rod do the work for you. And I thought, well, what does that mean? I had no idea what let the rod do the work for you meant. And of course, through adding power and everything else, I tried to make the rod work for me, but that wasn't working. So we have smooth moves. Short distance equals short strokes and short pauses. But if I want to cast further, I pick up my paintbrush, my paint tin, I put it aside, I get the roller trail, and I start to roll a much longer ceiling. And what this does is adds depth down into the blank of my rod, and we'll start making this butt section bend too. So we have short distance, short strokes,